Dr. Walter Block has been a senior research fellow at the Fraser Institute in Vancouver, British Columbia, and director of its Center for the Study of Economics and Religion. This week, he moved to Massachusetts, where he will assume the position of Professor of Economics at Holy Cross College. Dr. Block is a prolific author of scholarly articles on economics. He is a regular contributor to the Financial Post and writes a syndicated column for Sterling newspapers. Dr. Block is also an economic commentator on national television and radio. He also lectures widely on public policy issues. When we found out he published a book called Economics and the Environment, A Reconciliation, we decided he would be the perfect choice for sharing with us his perspective of how environmental problems may be addressed through the free market. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Block.
Thanks for the kind introduction. We face great environmental dangers. These dangers fit easily in amongst the top problems facing us: war, disease, starvation, pestilence, drugs. It might even be contended that the environmental problems are as dangerous as all of them, perhaps even as all of them put together. At risk are air, ozone, the greenhouse effect, deserts, water, species extinction, oil spills, hazardous waste. The list goes on and on. I'd like to share with you, on a personal note, several perspectives that got me interested in the problem originally, or that indicate the perspective from which I approach it. One of them was, I don't mean any insult to the great city of Los Angeles, but I was there several years ago, and tears started coming out of my eyes. And I wasn't particularly unhappy or anything, it's just that the air hurt. And, when the air hurts, there's something weird going on. And there are places in Southeast Asia where people wear gas masks just to go out and walk the dog or something. Then there was another one when Lake Erie caught fire. Now, I don't know where you come from, but where I come from, lakes aren't supposed to catch fire. I mean, we don't know. There's already water there. Maybe some sort of magical potion or something, but it's a weird experience. And the other one was this great cartoon I saw in New Yorker magazine where there was this mother and a daughter. This little girl was maybe 10 years old, eating in an outdoor restaurant. And you'd think the caption would say something like, from the mother, "Hurry up, dear," to the daughter, "Eat your soup before it gets cold." No, the caption was, "Hurry up, dear, eat your soup before it gets dirty." Given these environmental problems, the whole environmental movement has arisen to address them. But there's a weakness of this mainstream environmental movement. It doesn't cover the entire possible political economic spectrum. I don't say it's limited to the views of these following people, such as Lester Brown, David Suzuki, Barry Conner, Paul Ehrlich, Tom Hayden, Earl Street, John Denver, Earl Baldwin Brundtland, Ralph Nader, Jeremy Rifkin, Pauline Moab. It's not limited to these people, but certainly these people have been dominating the dialogue on this issue. And I think if we're going to maximize our chances of reducing or solving environmental problems, the spectrum of dialogue should stretch all the way from these people to such people as Adam Smith or Milton Friedman or Friedrich Hayek, people associated with the free enterprise point of view. And with more options, there's a better chance of success. I'm here today to present the free enterprise perspective on environmental problems. My claim is that environmental problems are created by socialism, by government interventionism, and that the cure for environmental problems is free enterprise and capitalism. But before I go into this analysis, I want to consider who the other ball players are, because sometimes you can't tell who's who without a scorecard. And I've divided the group into four aspects. First of all, the innocents. I guess I include my own children who are now age 13 and 11, and they come home from school and, "Daddy, this is not environmentally sound, cut this out, your car smokes too much from the exhaust." They get stuff at school that pretty much is indicative of what's going on TV or in the newspapers or John Denver's view or Barry Conner's view, namely that greed or the marketplace is responsible for the environmental problem. But these are innocent people, and I think the average person in the street is pretty much innocent of anything on this, but concerned and reasonably so. Then there are two groups that I call the green socialists. The first one are the Marxists. These are radical Marxists who've seen their ideal, their life's dream, their life's ambition come a cropper on the other side of what used to be the Iron Curtain. But they're true believers. They want socialism. They don't trust individual initiative or anything like that, or individual responsibility. They want the state to control our lives. They see that red socialism is no good, so they become green socialists. These are the people I call the watermelons. They're green on the outside, but they're still red on the inside. The second group of green socialists are the radical tree lovers, the eco-terrorists, the maniacs, the human haters. You know, these are the people that say trees have rights, trees have as many rights as people. What do you mean cutting down a tree? How'd you like to be cut down? These are the people that throw blood at women who wear fur coats. These are the people that advocate bombing vans and other such like activities. I'm not really a big fan of the red socialists. They killed millions of people, but at least they were sort of pro-human. The reason that they did this was because, in a very error-laden way, they wanted to promote the human condition. They thought socialism was the best way to do it. But these green socialists, they're something else. I mean, they see human beings as vermin. There's some real wild quotes from this group to the effect that the humans are like a virus and should be wiped out. Millions of people should be wiped out. I'm not kidding. The fourth group, I think, are people like myself, and I hope people like in the audience here, who don't blame the market for environmental problems, but rather see in the market at least a potential solution. Let me read two very brief quotes from the green socialists. One is, who was talking about the contamination of New York City beaches. I think the motivation is greed. Non-caring about the planet, non-caring about the ocean, and not caring about the people who live on the planet and want to use the ocean. Greed. Another quote. They would rather rape the environment and make a lot of money for themselves than not rape the environment, clean up, and later on stay competitive. The mills are here to make a lot of profit, and they're making a lot of profit at the cost of our environment. I think these folks are indicative of the thinking of these people. Fortunately, however, there are already strong signs that the market philosophy is being incorporated into environmental thinking to some small degree. I would mention in this regard groups like the Nation Conservancy, Ducks Unlimited, Audubon Society, and Sierra Club. They don't get A+ marks, but at least it's not an F either. They realize that you can't buy a politician. You can only rent one. This year you give them a payoff or a hard payoff, and they're bringing through. Next year something else is more sexy or more involved, the hell with the environment. So they realize that if they want to protect and preserve the environment, they've got to do it themselves. They can't rely on the political sphere. So instead of asking the government to buy woodlands and wetlands, etc., they buy it themselves with money voluntarily raised from the public, which is in the old capitalist voluntary tradition. There was an amazing story about the Audubon Society with the Rain National Forest Reserve right here in Louisiana. Guess what was discovered on the Rain Forest Reserve? Natural gas and oil. And you'd think that the ordinary environmentalists say, oil, gas, yuck, that's the disgusting stuff, we're against it. But because they owned it, their incentives were very different. They realized that if they developed it in a way that would not harm their holdings, they would then be able to go out and buy jillions of more acres of holdings, and that's exactly what they did. Whereas had that been in a public preserve, you can bet your boots they'd be down in Washington testifying, oh no, let's never develop any oil and gas or anything. The hell with civilization, in effect, because that's what oil and gas means. Well, my orientation is to try to reconcile economics and the environment. That's the title of our book, Economics and the Environment and Reconciliation. You have those green colors, which give you a taste of what it's about. What I want to do is to use economic means to achieve environmental ends. And the best way to introduce the economic means, by which I mean a price system, is by use of street signs. Street signs are very important. We take them for granted all too often. And yet our lives would be unmanageable without them. I mean, imagine coming to a strange city and trying to make your way around. It would be all but impossible. There are stories in medieval times when a town was surrounded by invading army. What they would do is take down the street signs on the ground that the local folk knew how to get around, whereas the invading army would be rendered helpless. Not by bows and arrows, but by taking away street signs, which are the directing guideposts of the geography. Well, the reason I'm going on and on about street signs is because there's an analogy between street signs to geography and prices to the... What are you doing to me? Oh, okay. I'll carry on. There's an analogy between street signs and geography, or the urban geography, well, the geography in general, and prices to the economy. But just as we have to have accurate prices, not any old street signs will do. If some genie snuck in the middle of the night and changed old street signs in arbitrary ways, they would be no better than no street signs at all. Similarly, if some genie snuck in the night and changed all the prices around, we would be helpless economically speaking. Let me give you an example of the Soviet Union and Bulgaria, where I happen to have some data on with regard to prices, to show what kind of lousy street signs they've got there for their economy. Dinner for 5 people, an 8-course dinner with wine, $14. A month's rent, $3. Bread, 3 cents a loaf. A car, $100,000. I don't want a good car. I mean, a lot. A TV, $10,000. A pair of jeans, $1,000. That's why the Soviet athletes come home. They buy jeans. Not because they have a fetish for jeans or anything. No, it's the prices speaking. In Bulgaria, it costs $14 for a ton of steel. The price in the U.S. is $300 a ton. A 250-mile trip by air is $1. The cost of a bus ticket is less than the cost of printing the ticket. The mortgage rate is 2%, and this is in an inflationary period of 100%. So it's minus 98% in effect. Microwave oven, 10,000 lev. An average salary, 600 lev per month. So with price signals like this, it's no source of amazement that the whole Eastern Bloc economy is coming good. In the USSR and Eastern Europe, I can't speak for what's happening now. These notes were written 6 months ago or a year ago, and things are changing now. But as of a year ago, there was a misallocation of economic resources. But in the United States and in the Western world, we have a misallocation of environmental resources because our prices are really good at perestroika. Our environmental prices are socialistic prices. They're not based on free enterprise. So the solution to the problem is to have private property rights which lead to accurate prices which guide us in a rational manner. The problems in the environment are not intrinsic to the market, they're due to non-market institutional arrangements. Now I could stop right here because that's all I have to say. The rest of it is just illustrations. But I think I'll give you 1 or 2 illustrations to put a little bit of meat on the bones. What I would really like to do if I had 3 hours would be to go into detail over the following problems: air pollution, hazardous wastes, plastic, tigers, nukes, love canal, forests, species extinction, oil spills, greenhouse effect, ozone layer, overpopulation. But we're severely constrained for time, so what I'm going to do is to take one of these cases, plastic, the problem of plastic, and to do something in depth, and then take 2 or 3 others and give you a thumbnail sketch of how I would proceed with this kind of analytic perspective. The reason I'm so hopped up about plastics is because I was very up when I found out that McDonald's opened in Moscow. I mean, to me, this was a real indication of capitalist Western success. I mean, what more encapsulates our way of life than McDonald's? I mean, my kids swear by it. They, and I'm sure their children and grandchildren also swear by McDonald's. So they opened up McDonald's in Moscow, and this was a joyous experience. However, did you people know that there are many towns and villages in these United States, land of the free, home of the brave, where they will not allow least they would not until the balance comes out about a year ago on plastic. They would not allow them to open because they engaged in using styrofoam and plastics, and this was seen as an abomination. That's why I'm wanting to use this as an illustration. So what I'm going to assume for the sake of argument, and later on I'll take that back, is that plastics are as evil as anyone has ever said they are, only doubly so. Plastics, styrofoam, all those kinds of products are environmentally unfriendly, they're non-biodegradable, they're toxic waste, they're real bad stuff. And I want you to come along with me in the following mental experiment. Assume that you've gone shopping to the local supermarket, they've run up your purchases, you've paid for it, and now they ask you that inevitable $64,000 question. Paper bag or plastic? You stand there scratching your head, and we're going to put ourselves in the place of the person in that position, and we're going to ask what motivations attach to that person. And right now, there's only one motivation: benevolence. Feeling for our fellow human creatures, love for the planet, something like that. In other words, if you're a nice guy, you'll take the paper. And if you're a lousy rotten scoundrel like you guys are, you'll take the plastic. But we know what Addison said about benevolence. He said benevolence is not from benevolence that the butcher and the baker and candlestick maker because their product is rather out of self-interest. Now, I'm not putting benevolence against self-interest. I'm saying if this is a serious problem, and it is, then it behooves us to look for every human motivation. But I'm not knocking benevolence. I think benevolence moves the world. I mean, our churches, our society, this organization is based on benevolence. This is a voluntary organization. So that's all well and good, and I'm in favor of benevolence. I don't want you spreading rumors out anti-benevolence. However, I think it would be nice if we also had selfishness at our beck and call. But we don't. Why not? Well, let's go into the economics of it. The economics of it are, as I make clear in my chapter to this book, that it costs, say, just for illustration purposes, it costs a penny to produce a paper bag and it costs a penny to produce a plastic bag. And you go scratching your head, well, it's a penny versus a penny, so you have no economic incentive whatsoever. Why is this? Why is the price system, remember that? Why is the price system so lousy? Why is it such a lousy, no good guidepost? Here's a crucial problem. The price system says it's throwing up its hands and it's saying, we can't help you. I mean, an ideal price system should be that it would cost $20 for the plastic bag, right? And a penny for the paper bag, and then everyone would be led as if by invisible hands to choose the paper bag. That plus benevolence would solve the problem, but it's not working. Why isn't it working? Do you want to guess? The answer is socialism. Socialism in a quasi-unrelated area, namely garbage disposal. Right now we have socialized garbage disposal. The government says in effect to us, okay, well how much is it going to cost for us to cart away all your garbage? Oh, it will cost, say, $1,000. Just figuring it out. Okay, well, we'll tax you guys $1,000. Forget about the fact that we have budget deficits. We'll tax the whole thing, and then we'll give you these services for free. Right? You pay for it. It's all like the freeways, only they should be called taxways. They're not freeways, they're taxways. Right? Well, garbage is not a freeway, it's a taxway. They collect money from you, and then they use it for free. So you have no economic incentive to do anything. How would it be under free enterprise? How would it be if we privatized the solid waste management or garbage disposal industry? Okay, now forget about the mental experiment for the moment in the supermarket share county. You now own a couple of hundred acres, and you're thinking of going into business as a dump site owner. Okay, but we're still assuming that plastics is the scourge of the earth. And you're contemplating the paper and plastic question, and you say to yourself, well, plastic is bad news, Charlie. If I allow plastic in my property, I'll never be able to grow anything here. I won't ever be able to live here. It's just an abomination. Will I allow plastic? Sure. You're a fat capitalist pig now. You want to maximize profits. So you'll charge what it costs you to release. And suppose you figure out, and again, this is just a number for illustration purposes, that it'll real true cost of putting one plastic bag in your earth will be $5. Well, that's what the price of disposing of a plastic bag will end up being. You can't get more than that because of competition. If the true cost is only $5 and you charge $6, someone else will underbid you and go down to $5.90, $5.80, go down to $5. You won't charge less than $5 because the true costs to you are $5. So when the carter, that is the trucker who goes from home curbside to the garbage dump, comes to you, he says, sure, I'll take all the plastic you want at a charge of $5 each plastic bag. He goes to the homeowner and says, homeowner, sure, I'll take all that plastic, any plastic you want. Makes no difference to me. $5 a shot. And now let's get back to our original mental experiment. We're back in the supermarket checking out counter, only now we have a very, very, very different economic analysis. Remember before it was a penny versus a penny. Well, it's still a penny versus a penny to buy the bloody things, right? But now the paper is a penny to buy, a penny to dispose of it for a grand total of 2 cents, where the plastic is a penny to buy and $5 to dispose of it for a grand total of $5.01. Now, is there anyone here who doubts that the whole problem would go away if that was the choice we were faced with at the end of the supermarket checkout counter? Of course the whole problem would go away. I'm not saying that no one ever would use plastic bags. I was in the hospital last month, knee surgery, nothing serious. And they had a plastic bag dripping stuff into my elbow. Well, those kind of plastic bags would still be used because their value presumably is more than $5.01. But right now we use plastic promiscuously. We use it if it's worth more to us than a penny. And it's worth more to us than a penny, but not than $5. Okay, that is the area of the illustration that I want to go into in some depth. I'm almost out of time, so I want to make just a few concluding remarks. First of all, I've been assuming that plastic is the scourge of the earth. This is not necessarily true. I only assumed it for illustration purposes. There is this garbologist. Garbologist is to garbage as an archaeologist is to ancient monuments. So most of us see a mound of garbage and we go, yeah, let me get away. He sees a mound of garbage and goes, starts drooling and ready to get in there and do the breaststroke into it and analyze it. Well, there's this guy, William Rathje, who's analyzed, it's sort of disgusting. My son is a garbologist, my son is a doctor, it doesn't work. But anyway, he's analyzed mounds of garbage from 50, 60, 70 years ago, and he says plastic is inert. It doesn't really, it's not toxic. But I'm just a dummy economist, so what do I know about these finer points of chemistry? All I know is the price system. The Paris says Holly on a cracker, I say price system, capitalism, freedom. Let me very, very briefly in conclusion go over 3 other areas. Air and water pollution, running out of resources and overpopulation. And I'll include them all the questions in the session. First, on the air and water question, it's the same problem as plastic. People dump it into the water, people dispose of their waste into the air, and they don't pay a price. The price is zero, so of course they'll do it. Look, if you were a business person, and you were filled with greenness, and we call it to your very core, you would still have to realize that if you dispose of your waste in a very expensive way, and your competitors just dump it into the air and water, you go broke. So that's no recipe for the solution. The recipe for the solution is to get a price for dumping into the air and water, and the technicalities are present, and that would take a long time to go into, but the principle is clear. Running out of resources, or extinction of animals. You know what happens when there's a blackout? What happens to the price of candles? As it goes up. Well, this entices us to use less of them, and it gives signals. Remember those street signs? It gives signals to the producers to start producing more of it. So everything is fine. But we don't have prices for some resources and for some animals. Elephants, rhinoceros, alligators, crocodiles, things like that. If we did, as the danger of them became more severe or going extinct, the price of them would rise. This would entice people, induce people. People would be led by Adam Smith's invisible hand to save them all the more. And we don't have that. We don't have a crisis. We need perestroika here. Third, overpopulation. As far as I'm concerned, I'm a big lover of humanity. I'm a humanist. In the sense of sexist or racist, only the human beings. And I favor humans as against other species. I I'm sorry, I don't apologize for it. Some of my best friends are human beings. And I like human beings. As far as I can see, Earth is empty. Anyone who's ever been up in an airplane and looked down can verify that. I used to live in Canada. I'd fly across there. Now, there's an empty country. I mean, there's no one there. 25 million people. It's like the third biggest country in the world. Calculations have shown that if every member of the human race, all 6 billion of us, were organized into 4-person family units and given 8,200 square feet to live on, that's the average front yard, backyard, and middle-class house, everybody, all 6 billion of us could fit into Texas. The place is empty. Remember those days, well, Texas is a little crowded, but the rest of the place, they have no one. Remember those days when we all used to, this is many years ago, when we all used to try to stuff ourselves into a telephone booth? Well, if the whole human race did that, a lot of togetherness here, I'm talking serious togetherness, we'd fit into a cube 1 mile by 1 mile by 1 mile. That's all the human beings are. The place is bloody empty. We don't have starvation because of overpopulation. In India and Bangladesh, there is starvation, but it's not due to overpopulation. It's due to socialized agriculture. There's starvation in Ethiopia, and Ethiopia is empty. The reason for that starvation, again, is socialization of agriculture. There are places that are highly concentrated populations, London, Paris, New York, Boston, Los Angeles. No starvation there. Starvation got nothing to do with overpopulation. I was once debating someone on this issue, and I went on and on rattling, giving my views, and in the end, what I said is, there is my opponent. He's going to come up in here and tell you that there are too many people on the earth. And yet, that is a contradictory position. He doesn't believe it. He cannot believe it. Because he has it within his power to reduce the size of the population by 1. The fact that he's sitting there, ready to come on and argue with me, shows that he doesn't believe his own arguments. Now, I got roundly booed and hissed and condemned because it was a very hostile audience. But I still have stuff. It's an internally inconsistent position. It's a philosophical contradiction to be against people and to be alive. And if they had any decency, they would do the right thing. Thanks to your attention. Okay, I'm ready for questions. The lady in the back.
I have a question about your paper classes. First of all, the right answer in my mind is paper classes. No, I brought my own. The other thing is when you say if you charge $5 to pick it up, this is a serious proposal they put out on the boards for an island. The environmental community is behind it. I represent the aesthetics perspective. The only one is saying no, this is a lousy idea. Because you're going to find it not dumb, you're going to find people not putting their trash out, putting the trash in that lot. So sometimes political considerations and human actions go beyond the strict economics of, okay, we're going to charge $1 to pay back the curb.
Yes, I think that's a very good question, very insightful. I have several responses. First of all, on the recycling, namely bring your own bag, whether paper or plastic, if you keep reusing or recycling. Well, the price system is the street sign for that too. I mean, the price system is pervasive. It's not just limited to the question of plastic or paper. It's also covering the question of how much garbage and how much wrapping. See, the wrappings that are now given to us in foods and milk and whatever are based on a zero price of disposal. It's perfectly rational for manufacturers to wrap goods as they do now, given the prices that they're facing. But these prices are as reasonable as $1,000 for a pair of jeans. See, if we had a price system that indicated what the true cost of disposing of wrappings were, wrappings or the paper, plastic, or whatever, then we would be led as if by invisible hand to recycle optimally. Whereas right now, it's sort of like chicken with its head cut off running around squawking, if you can follow that one. We're sort of in the dark. We don't know how much to recycle. I mean, you can't say recycling is the answer because it has to be optimal recycling. You know, should we recycle tissue paper? I mean, should we recycle? Yes, we should recycle 40-year-old Rolls Royces. And the market tells us, you know, recycle it, but not recycle 40-year-old whatever, Volkswagen or something. Now, with regard to the, I'll call on you next. With regard to the midnight dumping and stuff, and the Rhode Island thing of charging $5, I heard Gorbachev say, we're going to have the free market, and the price of bread is going to be raised. Now, does anyone see a contradiction here? I mean, if we have a free market, Gorbachev has nothing to do with the price of bread. We have a free market in frisbees and in rubber bands and paper clips, and Bush doesn't get involved in the pricing of those things. Well, Rhode Island should have nothing to say about what the price of plastics are. I mean, that's not the free enterprise system where Rhode Island Senate or House or something says what the price should be. How bloody blazes do they know what the price should be? That's price fixing. That's government intervention. What I'm saying is privatize the solid waste management industry and let the price be generated the way the price of sweaters is generated. You know, if you were to look around at what the problems are, there are no problems with bubblegum, paper clips, rubber bands, because there's no government involvement there. Wherever there's a problem, there's government involvement. So I see less of it, not more of it. Now, with regard to midnight dumping, honestly, you see, no matter what, we're human beings, and some of us are going to be bloody-minded. We rape, we murder, we steal. Okay? We have jails for such activity. And hopefully, if the police were not so busy doing all sorts of other things that they shouldn't be doing, they could concentrate on victim crimes, not victimless crimes. And we would stop people like this. But I think that most people would not burn plastics or dump trespass plastics onto other people's property if we had penalties that really stopped it to them. I mean, you know, if you went to jail for 20 years for doing this, people would take choice. If the true price of a plastic bag is $5, and I'm no central planning, I'm not saying it should be. I'm just using that for illustration purposes. But if the real price was $5, it's not that they buy lots of plastic and then worry about disposing it. They wouldn't buy it in the first place. Except for that 1% that murders and rapes and steals. And with them, you know, we really have no answer. The lady in the next last row.
I'd like to say something about our federation. We sell bags. We don't use plastic or paper. We recycle our bags. This is a natural thing that we all have. Our state wanted. Our rules have gone out. We have the right to know the law that's been passed. And we've got chemical companies where everything is much more allowed to go in. It's the right to never allow us in the door to check their preference. And we found that they were doing a lot of things they shouldn't be. Now when you go to a chemical company, they have a big sign, welcome. And they have written on the sign what the chemical is, how toxic it is, and so forth and so on. So we are accomplishing things. And what was the other thing? We have gone down to different companies.
I'm sorry, I can't hear. Could the rest of you please allow her to be heard?
We have surgery touching because we, as garden covers, went out and went to these companies this week, gone to soap companies. We've gone to people that put out toothpaste. What was the one that Wurzel. Now they have Wurzel on your mind, and they're advertising. So I think what you're saying is wonderful. But I think that we as garden covers have been able to accomplish much because we were not we could show all financial history. It was proof every 2 years that we've been able to go out to the world and I just want to say thanks to all the garden covers.
Well, I applaud this group and other groups such as the Audubon Society, Ducks and Limited, which have acted in this regard to try to help the environment. But the analogy that comes to my mind is the pilot. And the directional signal fall out and you're trying to land a plane in the dark. Or, to use my other analogy, you're trying to get around town and there are no street signs. What you're doing is making believe that there are street signs and figuring out which way you go if there were street signs. Or to be less analogous, or not argue by analogy so much, what you're trying to do is act in such a way as if we had a real price system for environmental concerns and act in that way. Sort of like in my case when I'm using $5 as an example of the plastic bag. So I think that we're on parallel paths. What I'm trying to do is say, in order to accomplish the task of this organization, it would be very helpful if you had some street signs that would enable not only you to do some good works, but would focus the selfish interests of the whole society in this way. So I see ourselves as on parallel paths. We're aiming at the same direction, but I'm using economic analysis, you're using common sense. Yes?
I have to dispute one of your facts, if I understood you correctly, that all the population in the world today could be compressed in a 1 mile cube. I'm pretty good at visualizing things. I don't think the entire population of New Orleans would fit into a 1 mile cube. Even compressed, like.
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't have the citation here, but if you write to me at Holy Cross Economics Department, Worcester, Mass, zip code 01610, I'll dig up the citation. I mean, I didn't do that myself. There was some weirdo that made that calculation. Let me repeat that. Economics Department, Holy Cross College, Worcester, Mass, WORCESTER, and the zip code is 01610. I mean, it's sort of rough, when I give a 20-minute speech, I can't give you all the footnotes you can appreciate. A lot of this you have to take on trust, or buy the book and see the footnotes there.
I just went through the arithmetic, it does work.
It does, well, there we go. We have a mathematician. We're assuming, I think, something like 5'8" tall, a foot and a half wide and maybe 6 inches deep, or something like that.
Cubic foot.
Yeah, we're assuming everyone stands like this. So, like, even worse than slave quarters. Think of sardines. Or people stuffing themselves into a telephone booth. And I think the math is correct, but, we'll have to, we'll do this together. Yes?
With regard to
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
regarding the midnight geography, how would you catch, I have 2 questions, how would you catch these people? And you think that the police are out there doing something that they shouldn't be doing when they're maybe saving somebody from being raped or catching a murderer, and they should be out on the road where you always see dumping.
No, I think I've been misinterpreted here. I am certainly in favor of the police stopping murderers and rapists and thieves. Believe me, I'm very much in favor of that. Those are the bad guys, and the police are the only ones that I think can do it. But there are many other crimes that I don't really think are crimes, like violating rent control regulations or the so-called economic crimes, and I think if we got them off the books, we have more police power. And even if we didn't get them off the books, I think that we should use more money for police because we, in general, live in a society that's not as safe as it should be. But I think that one additional thing that the police could do would be to stop people who abuse plastic by burning it into the air or dumping it on other people. But as I made the point with the other woman in the back there, right now we vision, everyone dumping plastic. But I don't think it would be that way. I think it would be the usual criminal element of 1 or 2%. If we had a price system, I insist that if the price of plastic, the full cost, not just buying it but disposing of it, was $5, it's not that people would be up to their armpits in plastic wondering how they get rid of it. They wouldn't buy it in the first place. We have a very small... I'm sorry?
The dumping of garbage in remote places.
Yes.
We actually had a policeman in an airplane spotting the dumpers, and they still dump. And that's what I'm saying.
Well, economics indicates all we have to do is double the penalty and double it again, and yes.
Also, Oklahoma, your booth that you have, do want to add taxes locally or nationally for incentives toward correcting our problem and polluting the environment?
I'm really sorry. If I'm going to do justice to the question, I have to understand it better.
Did you, in your chapter, list, or maybe throughout the book, list specifics for taxation towards direct environmental treatment?
No, we're trying to get away from taxation. I only mention this in response to the midnight dumping question. I think the midnight dumping question is a really not an important issue. Because I think, let me rephrase it. I think that in a free enterprise system, which we now do not have, the midnight dumping question would be a very unserious question. I think that right now, under environmental socialism, it's a crucial question. But I think that the answer for it is not mainly the police and raising taxes for more police. I think that is a very unsophisticated solution. An elegant solution is a price system, a series of environmental street signs, which will lead people in their own selfish interest not to act in such an inefficient manner in the first place. You know, there's that expression, don't fight the alligators, drain the swamp. Well, what I'm advocating here is not that we fight midnight dumpers one by one and, you we're going to grab you and throw you in jail. We're going to get you. That's fighting the alligators. The way to get them is to drain the swamp. If I can use this non-environmental analogy. And the way to drain the swamp here is by having a price system which leads most people to act in a way that is cooperative one with another. Yes?
I was referring more to business. Most of the times if you're given an extra tax incentive, they will correct their own in-house problem. You don't see it with us?
I'm not a big fan of tax incentives or taxes. I think that is a government solution, and I think that government is all I'd say not the works, and the government is the source of the problem. It's not the cure. Now, had I gone into the air pollution situation in greater depth, in the depth that I had in the plastic versus paper, I would have made the following remarks. Let me just make some of them because it's pertinent to your question. In the 1830s, when there was what we would now call environmental cases, in those days they were called nuisance cases, what would happen was some woman would hang out her washing on a back line, and a factory would belch forth smoke and get her laundry wet, and dirty rather, and she'd go to court asking for an injunction, not just for any old thing. She'd ask for a court order to get that factory to stop it, and she'd get it. She'd get it. And this meant that factory owners had an incentive to develop smoke prevention devices, to use research and development to solve this problem, to use high-grade anthracite coal instead of low-grade sulfur coal, to act responsibly, because the courts in the 1830s were upholding property rights, when we talk about property rights. Or a farmer would go to court and say, this big bad railroad got sparks on my haystacks. And the same thing. The courts were granting under relief. And the economy was moving toward a rational response to the environmental problem. However, in the 1840s and the 1850s, and please don't ask me for all the citations, they're in the footnotes. Take my word just for a moment. In the 1850s, a new legal philosophy started to pervade the society. No longer were private property rights important. The next time the little old lady or the farmer came in, the court would sneer at her and say, how are you stinking property rights? You allow these selfish, individualistic property rights. There's something more important than your miserable property rights. What's that? That's the public interest. Drum roll to public interest. And what does the public interest consist of? The public interest consists of economic growth. And how are we going to get economic growth? By having manufacturing. So the hell is your property rights? We're going to let these guys run roughshod over you. We're going to let them use the air and the water and your property as free disposal sinks. No longer did they have any incentive to use anthracite coal instead of sulfur coal. No longer did they have any incentive to engage in smoke prevention devices. No longer did they have any incentive to consider the property rights of other people. Why should they? If they did, they'd go broke, because other people wouldn't. One thing that emanated from this period was that they made them build higher smokestacks. into the clouds. So, of course, this particular factory isn't bothering this woman. This factory is bothering that woman, and that factory is bothering this woman, and this is no solution. This is a government solution. What I say is we've got to turn back the clock. I hate to use that expression, but I can't think of a better one. Get back to the 1830s. You see, what we're doing is we're missing 160 years of research and development that the capitalist system would have been working on to solve the problem. That's why the problem is so hard. Do you know that stuff in forensic medicine? You know, A stabs B, and he gets the teeniest speck of blood, and he washes his clothes. They can still, months later, with forensic technology, find out who the blood was from and get the murder. At least they can do it in detective stories, and I think they may already do. But here's forensic environmentalism. It's nowhere. If I get a speck of dust on me, nobody knows what factory it came from. And yet, if we had been working on 150 years on this instead of trying to get someone up to the moon to talk about a waste of expense, in my view at least, if we had 160 years of research and development in the smoke particle forensics, there'd be nobody free to environmentally dump. I mean, this is serious plastic dumping. This isn't, some guy with 3 bags full of plastic. This is companies. The reason we have the problems we have is because we took a wrong turn in the 1830s. And the solution to that is, I think, property rights and free price systems that emanate only from property rights and not from government tax solutions and not from government solutions. Government has a role to play. In my view, the government is like a fire. If it stays in the fireplace, that's great. If the fire gets out into the living room, you have problems. Well, what the government has to do is to protect property rights, protect persons, have the judiciary, courts, all these police, and that's about it. Not much more than that. Maybe some slight social welfare program or something. But as far as the economy, very little else. Instead, the government has been doing all sorts of things, screwing up farm prices, messing up residential housing prices, interfering here and having vast bureaus in Washington. And they have not been doing the one thing that the economy needs them to do, and that is to define property rights in a reasonable way. No, in the 1840s, and up until about 15 years ago, entrepreneurs were given carte blanche to the air and the water in each other's lungs. And all of a sudden, we wake up 150 years later and we say, holy cow, you need a gas mask to walk outside. Your suit is getting dirty. It must be a fault of greed and capitalism. Right? Yes, so we need more government intervention. Nonsense.